The classroom was buzzing with chatter, the kind that always grew louder just before the teacher arrived. It was Monday morning, and students of Franklin High were restless after the long weekend. But for one person, this morning wasn't just ordinary, it was terrifying. That person was Alara, the new girl. She had just transferred to Franklin High 2 weeks ago after her father's job moved them across the state. Quiet, polite, and with long silky hair that flowed down her back like a waterfall, she carried an aura of shyness that made her an easy target for those who craved attention through cruelty. Alara sat at the back of the class, clutching her books close to her chest. Her eyes stayed down, never meeting anyone else's for too long. She knew whispers were being exchanged about her. She had heard them all week. She thinks she's better than us. Look at her hair. She probably spends hours on it. Bet she won't last here. The words cut like invisible knives, but Alara never reacted. That silence, however, only made her seem weaker in the eyes of the wrong people. At the front of this cruel pack were 3 notorious bullies: Jessica, the queen bee with a sharp tongue and sharper jealousy, Brianna, her sidekick who laughed at every insult Jessica threw, and Derek, the tall, cocky boy who enjoyed seeing others humiliated. Together they were the storm that nobody wanted to stand against. That morning, Jessica's eyes were already locked on Alara. Look at her, sitting there like she owns the place with that princess hair. Jessica whispered to Brianna with a smirk. Brianna snickered. Derek leaned over his desk and added, but she'd cry if someone snipped it off. That hair is the only thing she's got going for her. The 3 of them exchanged wicked grins, and an unspoken plan formed between them. The class began as usual. Mr. Collins, the math teacher, walked in with his stack of notes. He was strict about silence, but rarely paid attention to the back of the class once he started writing on the board. For the bullies, this was the perfect opportunity. Alara sat with her head slightly bent, taking notes carefully. She loved learning. It was the only safe place she had from the chaos of the outside world. But today, safety was about to be shattered. Derek pulled out a small pair of scissors from his pencil case, showing them slyly to Jessica and Brianna under the desk. Jessica's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Do it," she mouthed silently. Derek waited for the right moment. As Mr. Collins turned to solve a problem on the board, Derek leaned back in his chair, reached behind Alara, and in one swift movement, snip, a long strand of her beautiful hair fell silently to the floor. For a second, Alara froze. She felt the sudden lightness on the back of her head. She turned slowly, her heart pounding, and saw Derek holding the scissors with a grin that screamed victory. Jessica and Brianna burst into muffled laughter, covering their mouths with their hands. Alara's face turned red. Her throat tightened as if she couldn't breathe. She wanted to scream, but her voice betrayed her. She wanted to stand up, but her legs felt like stone. She reached back with her hand, feeling the uneven cut, and tears filled her eyes. "Oops," Derek whispered mockingly. "Was I saved you a trip to the salon." Jessica leaned over and added, "You actually look better without it. Too bad you can't hide behind your princess hair anymore." Brianna laughed so loudly that a few students nearby turned their heads, but instead of helping, they just watched with awkward silence. Nobody wanted to challenge the bullies. The laughter spread like wildfire. A few more students chuckled. Some whispered to each other, shaking their heads. But not one person stood up for Alara. She sat there, humiliated, her hands trembling, her hair uneven and ruined. Collins turned around briefly, raising an eyebrow at the noise. "What's going on back there?" he asked. The class fell silent instantly. Derek slipped the scissors back into his desk with practiced ease. Jessica smiled sweetly and said, "Nothing, Mr. Collins. Just solving the problem you gave us." Satisfied, Mr. Collins returned to the board, completely unaware of what had just happened. Alara sat frozen. Her tears slipped silently onto her notebook. She had never felt so small, so crushed. She thought of her mother, who used to braid her hair lovingly every morning before she passed away last year. That hair was her last connection, a symbol of her mother's love. And now, pieces of it lay on the cold classroom floor. Something stirred inside her chest, a mixture of grief, rage, and determination she had never felt before. She clenched her fists under the desk, her nails digging into her palms. The laughter of the bullies echoed in her ears like cruel bells. But deep down, she promised herself this isn't the end. They don't know who they just messed with. The bell rang, and the students rushed out, still snickering. Alara stayed behind, Picking up the strands of her hair from the floor with trembling hands, she placed them carefully in her notebook as if saving a broken piece of her heart. She stood slowly, her eyes no longer wet with tears but burning with silent fire. For the first time, she looked at the reflection in the classroom window. The uneven cut made her look different, stronger, raw, unpolished. She whispered to herself, "They think they broke me, but they just woke something they'll regret." As she walked out of the classroom, her shoulders straighter than before, a few students noticed the change in her eyes. The bullies didn't realize that the girl they thought they had humiliated had just begun a transformation that would shock every single person in Franklin High. The storm had only started.